The sea had never felt so restless. That morning, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Mira stood at the edge of the wooden dock that stretched from her home island into the Lantern Seas. The usual gentle sway of the Lantern Islands was replaced by a subtle but disturbing tremor beneath the waters. Dark ripples stained the surface, distorting the otherwise crystal clarity of the sea. Shadows flickered beneath the waves, ephemeral figures that twisted and writhed just beyond the reach of the sun's early rays. Mira's gaze sharpened. The whispers she had heard for days now, faint and haunting, grew louder with each passing tide. These were not the playful murmurs of the sea, but the sinister voices of dark-tide spirits, ancient servants of a wrathful god long exiled. The stories the imprisoned gods had shared with her came alive in this chilling reality. Daedalus, once a protector, now consumed by bitterness and rage, was stirring his forces, his shadow stretching across the waters like a creeping fog. The Lantern Islands, usually radiant beacons of gentle light, flickered uncertainly as heavy clouds gathered overhead. The magical tides shifted with an uneasy rhythm, unsettling the delicate balance that had kept the seas calm for generations. Mira felt the weight of it all pressing down on her chest as she turned away from the dock, the distant glow of lanterns dimming in the encroaching gloom. Back on her home island, the atmosphere was thick with unease. Word of the dark currents and restless spirits had spread swiftly, igniting whispers of fear and suspicion among the islanders. Mira knew the fragile peace that bound the floating islands was at risk of fracturing. She moved quickly through the bustling village streets, her footsteps muffled by the soft sand and the occasional clink of lanterns swaying overhead. Her thoughts were a tempest of doubt and determination. Inside the council hall, a space carved from driftwood and illuminated by hundreds of softly glowing lanterns, the island leaders had gathered. The air was charged with tension. Voices rose and fell in anxious debate, old grievances resurfacing beneath the surface like hidden reefs. The gods, now more present than ever, stood among them, their forms ethereal yet imposing. Ilan, serene and composed, radiated a calming presence amid the unrest. Her silver hair shimmered softly as she spoke of ancient cycles and the necessity of balance. Kel, ever brash and loyal, paced near the back of the hall. His tanned skin glistened with sweat, scars from past skirmishes tracing stories across his arms. Though his temper flared with suspicion toward the gods, he could not deny the palpable danger that loomed. His voice cut through the chatter as he challenged Mira's calls for unity, his words sharp but edged with reluctant respect. Mira met his gaze steadily. "We cannot let fear dictate our actions," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "The darkness rising is not just a threat to the gods or the islands, it is a threat to all of us. We must stand together." The room fell into uneasy silence, the weight of her words settling over the assembly like a tide. Even the gods, whose luminous forms flickered with ancient power, seemed to hold their breath. Meanwhile, aboard a modest vessel anchored nearby, Thala bent over his maps and scrolls. The flickering lantern light cast dancing shadows on his focused face. Lines of arcane script and delicate illustrations filled the parchment, chronicling the history and magic woven into the seas. His fingers traced the paths of the drifting islands and the patterns of the tides, seeking clues to the shifting power dynamics. Outside, the waters thrashed against the hull, restless and unpredictable. The haunting howls of the dark tide spirits echoed faintly across the waves, a reminder of the malevolent force gathering strength beneath the surface. Thela's eyes narrowed as he deciphered cryptic warnings etched in ancient texts. "The storm approaches," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else, "and it will not be weathered by old divisions." Night fell and Mira found herself alone along the shore, tending the lanterns that lined the water's edge. The soft warmth of the flames was a fragile glow against the cold, engulfing darkness. Her hands moved with practiced care, extinguishing one lantern only to light another, each flame a small defiance against the encroaching shadow. The wind carried whispered warnings, the salt-tinged air thick with portent. Mira's heart pounded with a mixture of dread and resolve. She thought of the gods imprisoned within the glowing island, of the ancient betrayals and bitter vengeance that had brought Daegis to this moment of wrath. Yet beneath her fear, a fierce determination burned brighter than any lantern flame. "We will face this together," she whispered to the night, a promise to the sea, the gods, and herself. "Whatever darkness rises, I will not let it consume us." As the stars blinked uncertainly behind the gathering storm clouds, Mira's silhouette stood steady against the restless sea. The dark currents were rising, and with them, the tide of conflict and change. But in the heart of the lantern seas, where light and darkness danced in delicate balance, a single soul's courage might yet hold the line. The coming days would test every bond, every belief, and Mira, once a simple fisherwoman, would find herself at the center of a storm far greater than any she had ever known. The horizon darkened, a brooding mass of swirling clouds, gathering with a speed that unsettled even the most seasoned seafarers of the lantern seas. Mira stood at the prow of her small fishing boat, the salt breeze whipping her dark braids against her sun-kissed skin. The sky churned above her, and beneath the restless waves, the familiar rhythm of the tides faltered, as if the sea itself sensed the brewing tempest. The lantern islands scattered around her flickered erratically, their gentle glows wavering like the uncertain heartbeat of the ocean. Somewhere beyond the veil of mist, the ancient light of the imprisoned gods shimmered faintly, their ethereal forms restless in the face of the coming storm. Word had spread quickly, whispers carried on the wind and water of the growing unrest among the islands and the shadow looming from the depths. Daegis, the dark god whose rage had festered in exile, was stirring the tides and skies with a wrath that threatened to unravel the fragile balance Mira had come to understand so deeply. The political tensions, the fear seeded in the hearts of islanders, and the uneasy alliances between gods and mortals all reached a crescendo as the first violent storm brewed on the horizon. Returning to her home island, Mira found the great hall already filled with murmurs and guarded glances. The flickering lantern light cast long shadows, twisting across faces marked by worry and suspicion. Island leaders, their expressions grim, sat alongside the shimmering presence of the gods she now guided. The air was thick with the scent of burning wick and salt, the heavy weight of impending crisis pressing down upon them all. Cal stood near the doorway, his tanned skin taut with tension, scars from past skirmishes visible even in the dim light. His usual brash energy was tempered by the seriousness of the moment, but the mistrust in his eyes was unmistakable. When Mira stepped forward, her voice steady but carrying the weight of urgency, she called for unity. "The storm is not just of wind and wave," she said, her eyes sweeping the room, "but of fear and division. If we are to survive what comes, we must stand together, gods and islanders alike." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, doubt and hope mingling in uneasy harmony. Cal's voice cut through the tension, firm and clear. "I don't trust these gods, Mira, but I won't let our home be torn apart. If standing with you is what it takes, then I'm with you for now." His reluctant pledge was a fragile but vital thread weaving the first strands of alliance. Ilan, serene and resolute, stepped forward next. Her silver hair flowed like the sea waves, eyes calm pools of ancient wisdom. She spoke softly of rituals long forgotten, rites to soothe the restless seas and bolster the protective light of the lanterns. Together, they moved to the shores where the lanterns burned bright against the gathering gloom. Under Ilan's guidance, the islanders and gods performed the ancient ceremony. Her hands wove through the air, fingers tracing glowing sigils that drifted upward like gentle sparks of hope. The sea responded with a sigh, waves lapping gently as if pacified by the ritual's cadence. The lanterns pulsed in rhythm, a fragile promise shimmering in the storm's shadow. Meanwhile, in a dim chamber lined with weathered tums and flickering candles, Valor bent over tied charts and arcane manuscripts. His sharp eyes scanned the cryptic patterns, fingers tracing lines that mirrored the disturbances on the water's surface. A sudden sharp intake of breath broke the silence as he deciphered a dire warning. The storm was not merely natural but a tempest fueled by ancient wrath and political strife. A convergence of forces that threatened to shatter the sea's delicate harmony. "The tides are shifting faster than we can predict," Thaler announced when he joined Mira and Ilan. "Dagis's influence grows, and with it, the unrest among the islands. We must be ready for the storm and what it brings beyond the wind and waves." Mira nodded, the weight of leadership settling heavy but resolute on her shoulders. "Then we prepare together." As night deepened, the storm's first growls echoed across the seas, a rumbling threat that stirred both fear and fierce determination. The Lantern Islands, glowing like scattered stars, seemed to brace against the dark tide. Mira felt the boundary between light and shadow blur, the ancient powers awakening with a force that promised both destruction and the chance for renewal. The gathering storm was upon them, and with it came the test that would forge or fracture the fragile bonds between gods and mortals, light and darkness, hope and despair. Mira's heart beat steady, a beacon amid the tempest, as she prepared to face the trials that awaited beneath the turbulent skies. The sea whispered its ancient song, a call to courage and unity in the drifting dark. And Mira answered, standing at the cusp of a new dawn where the fate of the Lantern Seas would be decided. The sky had darkened from the first hint of twilight to a roiling canvas of angry clouds, swirling like the restless tides beneath the Lantern Islands. Mira stood at the helm of her small fishing vessel, the familiar creak of wood beneath her fingers, now drowned by the rising howl of the wind. Around her, the sea churned as if possessed, waves crashing against the floating islands with a fury she had never witnessed before. A storm was coming, not just any storm, but one conjured by rage, ancient and bitter, and it threatened everything she held dear. "Steady, steady," she muttered, eyes scanning the horizon where the first streaks of lightning lanced through the thickening gloom. The distant glow of lanterns dotted the islands, each flickering in the gale like stars caught in a tempestuous sea. It was their light that now stood between survival and devastation. From the depths of the storm, a voice echoed dark and thunderous, carrying an undercurrent of wrath. Dagis, she could feel his presence, the shadow looming over the seas, commanding his dark tide spirits to rise and tear apart the fragile peace the islands had known. Her heart clenched with a mixture of fear and determination. There was no turning back. "Mira!" Ilan's voice called out, barely audible above the storm as the elder seer appeared at the edge of the island dock, her silver hair whipping wildly.
"The lanterns!"
"We must protect them, they are the heart of the island's balance." Mira nodded, gripping the rudder tighter.
"Gather the islanders!"
"Light every lantern, every beacon. We need a circle of light strong enough to hold back the darkness." The islanders moved with hurried purpose, their faces pale but resolute as they lit lantern after lantern, the warm glow pushing back the shadows like sentinels of hope. Kale stood beside Mira, his usual brash expression tempered by the gravity of the moment. "I'll lead the fighters," he said. "We can't let those spirits get close." Together with the gods, whose ethereal forms shimmered with ancient power, they began the desperate task of weaving protective wards. The gods stretched their glowing hands over the islands, their light coalescing into shimmering shields. Each pulse of their power sent ripples through the lantern glow, a beacon of resistance against the encroaching dark tide spirits that clawed from beneath the waves like living shadows. Mira's breath came in ragged bursts as she maneuvered her boat closer to the heart of the storm. Rain lashed at her skin, salt mixing with the cold water dripping from her hair. Beneath the turbulent surface, shadowy forms writhed, their eyes flickering with malice. She could almost hear their whispered threats, promises of ruin and despair. "Hold fast," she whispered to herself, the words a lifeline amid the chaos. Her doubts, the gnawing fear that had shadowed her since the god's revelation, threatened to swallow her whole. But now, faced with the tangible threat to everything she loved, those fears transformed into fierce courage. The storm reached its crescendo as lightning tore the sky apart, illuminating the desperate battle below. Lanterns flickered uncertainly, their light wavering against the overwhelming darkness. But it was not just the gods' power or the islanders' determination that held the line, it was Mira's unwavering resolve, the steady pulse of hope she carried within. "We are the light," she called out, voice strong despite the tempest. "We will not falter." As the tempest raged on, the boundary between light and shadow blurred. The sea itself seemed to hold its breath, caught between destruction and salvation. And in that fragile moment, Mira understood the true cost of the ancient powers awakening, a cost paid in fear, sacrifice, and the unyielding will to protect what must endure. The storm would pass, the seas would calm, but the lantern seas would never be the same, and neither would she. The night stretched on, each lantern a flickering promise against the vast drifting dark. Mira's gaze lingered on the horizon, where the first signs of dawn began to break. The journey was far from over, and the true test of courage had only just begun. With a steadying breath, she prepared to face whatever the coming days would bring, the light of the lanterns and the gods burning bright within her heart. The dawn crept quietly over the shattered pier, where Mira stood wrapped in the cool embrace of sea mist. The air was thick with the salt and the faint, lingering scent of smoke from the storm's wake. Around her the island stirred uneasily, the usual morning chorus of gulls and waves subdued by an undercurrent of tension. Whispers wove through the narrow streets, and between the drifting lanterns, voices steeped in fear and suspicion. Mira could feel it, a shadow lingering in the hearts of her people, a darkness born of recent turmoil and ancient fears. Her gaze drifted over the sea's smooth surface, where lantern islands bobbed gently, their lights flickering like distant stars caught in a restless sky. It was a fragile beauty, this world she knew so well, now trembling at the edges. The storm had passed, but the aftershocks were far from over. Mira's fingers brushed the worn wood of the pier, grounding herself against the rising tide of unease. Later that morning, beneath the lantern island's softly glowing core, Mira found herself once again in the company of the gods. Their forms shimmered with an otherworldly light, not constant but shifting, sometimes radiant, sometimes veiled in darkness. They told her of their pasts, tales woven from threads of light and shadow alike. They spoke not only of their dominion and their exile, but of the fractures within themselves, the duality that defined their existence. It was a revelation that unsettled Mira deeply. The gods were not paragons of pure light, but beings bearing their own scars and contradictions. The flickering shadows cast by their ethereal shapes danced upon the walls, like lantern flames caught in a restless breeze. Mira listened, heart heavy with the weight of their confessions. She saw in them the reflection of her own struggles, the fear, the doubt, the quiet determination to hold fast despite uncertainty. Word of the gods' revelations spread quickly, and with it came a tide of unrest. In the village square, Cal's voice rang out sharp and raw, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd like a sudden gust. His anger was palpable, a flame fueled by fear and the scars of past skirmishes. He accused Mira of endangering their community, of bringing forces they could neither understand nor control. The islanders' eyes flickered between hope and suspicion, their loyalty a fragile thread stretched taut by the weight of conflicting truths. Mira met Cal's gaze steadily, her own resolve hardening beneath the lantern-lit sky. She knew that fear was a powerful current, one that could either pull them under or carry them forward. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with the shadows of betrayal and broken trust, but she would not turn away. Not now. As night fell, casting the seas into a blanket of velvet darkness, Mira retreated to her boat. The flickering lanterns cast gentle pools of light, their glow a small defiance against the vast drifting dark. The soft lapping of water against the hull was a soothing rhythm, a reminder of the enduring pulse beneath chaos. She sat in silence, the weight of the day's revelations settling around her like a cloak. Stars began to prick the sky, distant and steady, ancient beacons that whispered of continuity and change. Mira breathed deeply, feeling the quiet courage that had carried her this far. Within her, the shadows stirred fear, doubt, but also fierce determination. She would face the darkness within herself and others, guiding the fragile balance of the lantern seas through the uncertain tides ahead. The night held its breath, and so did she. But the shadows were not yet done with her, nor with the seas she vowed to protect. The stories of light and darkness, of betrayal and forgiveness, were still unfolding, each lantern a flicker of hope amid the drifting dark, each heart a beacon waiting to be rekindled. And Mira knew the journey was far from over. I still remember the moment Ilan's voice softened, the way the lantern light caught the silver strands of her hair as she prepared to unveil a truth long buried beneath the tides. Her hut, small and fragrant with the scent of salt and herbs, felt like a sacred vessel cradling the weight of history as she spoke. Kale sat beside me, his jaw tight, eyes flickering between the elder and the flickering flames that danced in the lanterns. The gods were not always prisoners, Ilan began, her voice a gentle tide pulling us into the past. Once they ruled these seas with a balance that kept light and shadow in harmony. But power breeds fear, and fear breeds betrayal. She told us of an age when the gods walked freely among the Lantern Islands, their presence a beacon and a burden. Among them was Daegis, once a protector god whose heart darkened with bitterness after a devastating betrayal not by enemies, but by those he trusted most. His rage fractured the fragile peace, and in the chaos, the islanders and gods alike suffered. It was my ancestors who helped bind the gods, Ilan confessed, her eyes reflecting the flickering lanterns like twin moons. We believed exile was the only way to save the seas from ruin. But in doing so, we cast shadows that linger still. The air thickened with the weight of her words. I felt the pulse of the lanterns around us, as if they too held their breath. Kale's usual defiance softened, his gaze steadying on me. I didn't believe this story at first, he admitted quietly, but if Ellen's right, then this isn't just about gods or legends. It's about us, our choices, our fears. I nodded, understanding the fragile thread upon which our future hung. The exile was not merely punishment, but a fractured attempt at balance, one that had left wounds both seen and unseen. Later, standing at the edge of our island as dawn broke, the mist curling like whispers around my feet, I let the truth settle inside me. The sea stretched endless and unknowable, its surface catching the soft glow of the Lantern Islands like scattered stars. Ilan's revelations had shifted the currents beneath my thoughts, merging past and present into a tapestry I was only beginning to grasp. The path ahead was uncertain, but the weight of exile's legacy was now part of my burden to bear. I would need to hold fast to the wisdom Ilan had shared, to the fragile hope that even in shadow, light could endure. In the bustling market square, the salty air mingled with the murmur of cautious conversations. Kale approached me, his usual guarded stance replaced by a tentative openness. "Mira," he said, voice low but earnest, "I've seen the way you carry this. It's more than fear or duty. You understand the balance better than any of us. I'm with you. Not blindly, but because I believe this is the only way to keep our home safe." His words kindled a warmth I hadn't expected. Trust, like the lanterns we tended, needed tending itself, flickering, fragile yet capable of steady glow when nurtured. Together, we began the work of healing. Islanders came forward, mending the worn bridges between factions, repairing the damaged lanterns that symbolized our fractured harmony. Each glowing lantern felt like a pulse, a heartbeat of hope amid the drifting darkness. But even as light returned, distant thunder rumbled, a reminder that Daegis's shadow had not receded. The echoes of exile whispered through the seas, urging vigilance and courage. That night, as I watched the lanterns sway gently in the sea breeze, I knew the story was far from over. The past had been revealed, alliances forged, and the fragile balance tested anew. The lantern seas still held their mysteries, their light and darkness entwined in an eternal dance. And I, Mira, would be their reluctant guardian, navigating the tides of history and fate beneath lantern-lit skies. The journey was only beginning. The lanterns outside my window cast soft shadows that mingled with the quiet hum of the sea. I traced the braided strands of my hair, feeling the steady beat of the ocean in my veins. Ilan's story had opened a door I never knew was closed, stirring memories and fears long buried beneath the waves. How could one reconcile with a past so fraught with betrayal and loss? Yet, in that reconciliation lay the hope for a future where light and shadow might coexist once more. I rose and stepped out onto the dew-slick dock, the lantern islands glowing softly in the distance like drifting stars. Somewhere beyond those islands, Daegis waited, a tempest gathering in the dark. But so too did we gather our strength, lanterns held high against the coming night. The seas whispered their quiet song, and I listened, ready to answer.